Well, I meant to make a video after cruising the coast, or actually I meant to make some during cruising the coast, and just, well, it didn't. It was busy, and I was doing things and sidetracked, and well, I just didn't remember to. I had a blast on the first time for cruising, minus a couple of issues, which I'll discuss in a few. But overall, car did good. I didn't have any major issues. I did have to cut my cruising short towards the end of the week due to an issue with the alternator, which I'll talk about in a few. But overall, I had fun. It sucked I didn't get to finish, because part of cruising the coast, if for the people that don't go, is when you register, they give you a punch card, but it's a stamp card with locations to go visit, which is pretty much each city along the coast. And you go to the cruising the coast tent or venues, and they stamp your card. And if you get like 5 locations stamped, you get entered in a drawing for like $1,000 or $500 or something like that. So it's just a nice bonus thing. I didn't get to finish that because, well, my car had issues. But on to what I want to go over first, because I know some of the, excuse the dogs barking. I know some people watching this are probably going to be going for what I'm going to title the video, which is my first Holley sniper issues that I encountered, which was during cruising. So it's an issue that I was aware I was probably going to have eventually, and I knew I needed to do. I've just been lazy with doing it, because it's probably easiest to remove the sniper from the engine to do it. Makes it a whole lot easier, especially with my intake, since it's an air gap. If I were to drop any parts, they fall underneath the intake valley, because it's gapped. It's an air gap, so there's literally like an open valley in the runners. Like down in here, it's just holes. It's empty, which is where all my wiring's tucked. But if I were to drop something, it goes down there and becomes damn near impossible to get out. So the issue I had was the notorious sticking throttle. Now, as you know, if you watch my videos, let me grab a light actually so you can see this shit. I think this is my good light. We're gonna stick that right there. All right, so if you watch my videos, you know I have this throttle extension. I used to have the adjustable secondary, the progressive linkage. Mine was an adjustable billet one, where I could tune in where the secondaries come in. And when I installed my sniper, I installed it with that and with this, because I did a lot of research, reading on the forums, reading different websites, and reading Facebook pages, and determined that they were, what I thought at the time, upgrades to what this should have come like. Later on, I read some comments about how they tried progressive, and after removing the progressive linkage, they realized they only needed the extension. So since I had never ran mine without the progressive, I was like, you know what, I'll give it a shot. I had it tuned in the software. I adjusted the accelerator enrichment, all the things you do, or you're supposed to do when you run progressive, I had done. But I wanted to see what it actually drove like with the one-to-one linkage, if it was as bad as people said. Because the main reason people say to run a progressive is because, one, some people have said it helps with sticking secondaries. I don't know how, except to the fact that it doesn't keep the secondaries open all the time. But the main issue was people talking about peeling out, leaving stop signs and whatnot. And I think that issue had to do with the extension, or not having the extension, because without the extension, your pedal travel is like here to here, and it's just stupid short. But when you put the extension on, you get more travel because there's more throw. Now, anyways, on to the issue is my blades were starting to stick, my secondaries specifically, where, see if I can do this while holding the camera. This secondary has, that much travel off the spring. I don't know if you can see that moving, but that's how much it can travel without the primaries. The primaries has that little bit. It is just literally that. That's all the play you have before it starts engaging the secondaries. But the secondaries can actually stick that much before this spring will pull it shut. So it relies specifically on this spring right here. And I'm not gonna take credit for it because I didn't come up with this, but the solution and the easy fix is you add an additional wind on this spring to add some more tension. The other thing you can do, and which I did, was recenter or center, because some of them come poorly centered from factory. The actual blades, there's 2 Phillips screws on the top of each blade, and that is another reason why you should remove the sniper from the engine. But you loosen those screws just a little bit, and you can slide them around, adjust them, and rotate them, etc. I centered them as best I could. I may have to adjust them again. I don't know if you saw when I first cracked them, they wanted to hang a little bit. I don't know if they're gonna kind of work their way in a little bit better to where it didn't want to stick or hang. Hopefully I don't have to play with those again, because I don't know if I got them perfect. But you just have to loosen them and kind of move them around until you get them to where they feel centered and to where you can open the throttle and they're not wanting to stick. Now, other things I did, right now my spring is just kind of gutted with this screw down here. And I did actually take some length out of the spring so it had more tension. I don't have one of those, normally they're for throttle cables, the little bracket that bolts to your carb screws and has the little runner that comes along here, and normally they have a spring up front here that pulls the throttle back forward, or the little bracket that bolts down here so the spring goes straight back. So mine kind of pulls at an angle. That probably doesn't help either. But anyways, it seems to have fixed it. I took it for a test drive and my throttle's closing like it should. I actually need to readjust my idle, because to fix mine, I actually shut my blades more or less, because my rear was sticking so much that it was wanting to hold my idle at like anywhere between 1,500 and 2 grand. So I more or less shut my primary. So if the secondaries did hold open, my idle wouldn't be crazy. If they did shut, the IAC would just open an insane amount, and it would keep my idle. Wasn't the most ideal, but it worked, allowed me to keep driving it during cruising. Just a quick, easy fix. Ideally, I want to say I've seen people drill and tap this little spot right here, which is where this little tab would hit. And that would allow you to actually crack the secondary a little bit to hold your idle instead of using the main idle mixture screw. I thought about doing that as well, but I didn't. I may do it in the future, I don't know, but I've heard some people do that because that way it'll open the primary and the secondary butterflies a little bit to keep fuel flow and airflow consistent through both, or through all 4 bores. We'll see how it does. But that was my main issue, and the only real issue I've encountered with the sniper was just sticking throttle blades. It was an easy fix. It took me more time than anyone else probably, because I run my wires through my intake and they're a bitch to fish through there. Ideally, an hour tops to do this. But anyways, what I was gonna say earlier, the way to wrap this, all you need is a pick, a Phillips, or not a Phillips, a zip tie, and a pair of needle nose. There's a video on YouTube a guy put out. I can't remember his name or his YouTube channel. All I did was Google Holley Sniper secondary spring wrap or something like that, or spring, maybe just spring, I don't know. Just type in Google Holley Sniper secondary spring and it ought to come up. You literally just take the zip tie, this end of it, feed the spring through it, like the pointy part of the spring. So you slip that zip tie over that, and you wrap the zip tie around, grab a hold of it tight with the needle nose and pull, and it'll pull that spring on around, and you use the pick to pull it over into place and set it back on this little groove that it's on right here. That. Now I actually left a zip tie there. I don't know if it'll be a problem. See it? That helps keep the spring from wanting to bind out, because it was wanting to kind of flex outward. I didn't like it, so I put a zip tie on there as well. Don't know if it'll last or if the heat will make it snap loose, who knows. But it seemed like it might help. If it breaks off, oh well, it won't hurt anything. But that was, like I said, the only issue I had with the Sniper. So far, no other issues for me. On to what ended my trip. I have a Tough Stuff 140 amp one wire alternator, and it has been amazing for me. I've loved it. It's super easy to wire up, handles a lot of load, and it's worked flawless. And sometime during cruising, towards the end of the week, I want to say it was like Thursday night, I happened to notice my battery voltage was sitting at like 11 point something or 12 while running. And it would just kind of come and go. Like it would read that, and then later on while driving, it would be back to showing 13 volts, which was still fairly low because it ought to be around 14-ish. But anyways, that ended the trip for me because I couldn't trust my battery to stay charged. I didn't want to get stranded with the car somewhere. So I brought it home, parked it, and started unbolting the alternator. Gave Tough Stuff a call. Within like 10 minutes of talking to them, they figured out I knew what I was doing, and I'd already tested and verified that it was definitely the alternator. They said if I wanted to, I could take it to a local auto parts store. That was a waste of time, by the way, because apparently their alternator tester they use is like year, make, model specific, like all their other crap. You have to punch in a year, make, model, and it gives you a pass or a fail readout. So I don't even know what you would list that as coming off of. So I don't know. But they spun it up. I told them it was just a one wire GM more or less, and they punched in something that had that and said it came up with a fail. So worked for me. I mailed it off, and they didn't say anything about it. I bought that alternator probably 2 years ago, and I told them that I'd had it longer than a year. I was like, granted, the car hasn't been driving probably longer than a year, and I just hit 1,000 miles on it. It had very low mileage on it for it to go out, and I felt it was kind of odd. But they didn't fight me on it. They didn't say anything. They gave me an RMA number, told me to send it in, mailed it off. I think within a week, I had it back that Friday. I sent it off it was probably 2 weeks between sending it off and getting it back. I sent it off that first Monday I came back to work, I think. And the following Friday is when I got it back. Bolted it up, and it works flawless now. So praise the Tough Stuff. I'm hoping that was just a fluke thing that the one died, but their customer service is very happy, pleased with that. So she's back on the road again. I took her for a rip the other night, and oh man, I'd missed it. It just 2 weeks not having this car, and oh man, it was a blast driving it. But things I have in store for the future are probably gonna be held up by money. I want to get seats for it. I want to get a roll cage, or at least a roll bar and harness bar, so I can actually hook my harness up much more gooder, more properly than this setup. This, like I said before in the other videos, that is acceptable for these type harness that I have, and per Schrott's, I think Schrott is how you actually pronounce it. Per their instruction, that is acceptable. You see my lovely little sticker I got? Yeah, my souvenir from cruising. But yeah, I want to get a harness bar and an actual roll bar. I'd love to do somewhat of a full cage with swing out door bars or removable door bars. I'd also really want to do a removable harness bar, so if I have rear passengers, I don't have a skull crusher there. Although I did consider actually rigging up a way I can put harnesses in the rear seat as well, so that would be possible and not have the issue of worrying about their safety. But I want to be able to remove the bar for ease of access into the back seat and whatnot too, or at least allow it to like unpin and drop so I can get stuff over it and whatnot. But I'll have to figure that out and plan. From what all I understand, if I were to ever drag race it anywhere, it's not going to pass tech with a removable harness bar. That is, 1, a safety concern for the harness, and 2, a structural component of the main hoop, apparently. So it has to be welded in, from my understanding. I don't know if I'll ever race the car at track or drag race it where I would require to pass tech like that. But it is a nice idea to have that ability if I want to, should I say. Anyways, along with the cage, I want to put a T56 in this car. And the reason I want to do that at the same time I do the cage is because the carpet has to come out to weld in cage stuff. Carpet would also have to come out to do the transmission tunnel mods for the T56. And that is where the money comes in, because seats are roughly $1,000. Roll cage, probably $500 to $1,000, depending on what all components and additions and modifications to do with it, with like the removable or swing out door bars and whatnot. Those disconnects, the ones I was looking at, are fairly pricey. The transmission setup, that whole transmission swap, is probably pushing $5,000 easy. So yeah, money's gonna be a hold up on all of that. So I don't know what I'll actually get to next. And I don't know, I'm kind of at a standstill because I don't know what I can work on. I know I do need to swap this driver door still to try to fix this glass issue. You can see how it tapers to a big gap here and it slowly tapers to no gap up here. Yeah, so I'm hoping that door that I have up front in the garage will fix that issue so I won't have a gap down here when I roll the window up. That's still to be done, and that doesn't cost anything. That's just a lot of time to pull the front bumper off, fender off, all the door stuff out, and pull the door off. Yeah. And I still plan on doing a video for the sniper tuning or going over data log. I've been promising someone I was going to do that forever now, and I haven't forgotten about it, and I haven't necessarily been putting off because purely because I'm lazy, which that is a big part of it. I've been trying to figure out how in the world to use OBS to record my screen, and then I'm using, I'm blanking on it. I can't remember the editing software. It's what somebody recommended to me. But anyways, the OBS is the concern. I haven't figured out how to use OBS to record both of my screens and display it in a video where it's visible, if you follow. I want to overlay it where you can see both windows, the data log and the tune, side by side, like as if I'm viewing it on my monitors, and I haven't really figured out a good way to do that yet. So when I figure that out, I'll make the video, because I actually had to do data log review to tune this a little bit better, because I actually disabled learn and did a couple data logs with just closed loop and did a lot of manual tuning, and it actually ran a lot better than just going off of the learn feature. So anyways, my closed loop is down to like 1 to 2% on my normal driving range. It still comes in when I'm on the throttle, wide open throttle, or boosting here and there, because that's all not tuned out perfect, but idle and cruise is spot on perfect. All right, guys, I'll do a video for that later, like I said, and thanks everyone for watching, and thanks anyone for subbing, subscribing, following, etc. Apparently likes and comments on the video help it show up on people's feeds more, so if you do that as well, thanks. And stay tuned for more later. All right, guys.